Good evening, and let me just get rid of that. Good evening and welcome to the Community Center Building Committee meeting of February 12th, 2024. Following the guidance issued by the state in 2020 regarding the open meeting law, this public meeting will be held remotely, and individuals wishing to participate may do so by utilizing Zoom video conferencing technology. To join the meeting by video conferencing, you could visit the town website, doverma.org, for login. And the meeting is being recorded. So with that, get started probably with a roll call of those who are on the committee who are present. David Billings.
Yes.
Luciana Birdie.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good. Thank you. Barry Goldman.
Yes, I'm here too.
Terry Sobolewski.
Yes.
And Ruth Townsend.
Yes.
And I am Dick Malcolm, the new chair. To probably just take this opportunity to say thank you, Ford, for all the involvement you've had with the town through many years, and also with the community center and Carroll School. So thank you very much. Okay, get started with the approval of the minutes. Last meeting's minutes of 1/8/24. Is there any discussion on those minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I'll poll the board. David Billings,
Yes.
Luciana Birdie,
Yes,
Barry,
Yes.
Kerry,
Yes.
Ruth,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Okay, thank you. And now I'll turn it over to Al Estevez, our project manager.
Thank you, Dick, and thank you everyone for joining. Good evening. First, I want to introduce Katie Ferrier. She's with us right now, and she is with FMA. She's going to be our project manager going forward for the duration of construction, and she's been with us for a few months already, and she's great. So we're really happy to have her on board.
good evening.
Okay. Hi, Katie.
All right, so going to the construction process for the month of January, which is the payment that we're voting to recommend approval on today. In the pavilion building, the progress included the underground electrical, backfilling for the slab, the vapor barrier, and reinforcing. Once that was complete, steel erection started and actually completed towards the end of the month. At the gym building, staging for the CMU as well as winter conditions started, and CMU activities progressed to about 50% completion. In the 1910 building, 2 new footings were placed on the 26th, and investigations for the existing footings took place, and those can actually remain in place. So that's really good news there. At the site, the conduit for the transformer from the pole on Springdale was installed, and the existing sanitary structures were also removed by M. O'Connor. It is now the 12th of the month, and so between the end of February and now, some of the progress included a fix that we had to do at the pavilion slab. There was some missing rebar, and so that took place last week, and it's completed. And the gym building CMU erection is about 70% complete now. Upcoming activities is going to be the slab placement for the pavilion building. We're anticipating that's going to be placed by the end of this week. Completion of the CMU activities. I'm also anticipating that to be complete by the end of the week. Once the CMU is completed, we're going to proceed with the waterproofing and then a steel erection for the gym area. Other upcoming activities are the storm drainage structures. M. O'Connor was moving some dirt around last week to get ready for that. Any questions on the construction progress? Okay, looking at some pictures. The picture on the left is for the pavilion footprint, and this is what it looked like at the beginning of January. By the 19th of January, the backfilling for the underground utilities had been completed, had been compacted, dense grate had been installed. The vapor barrier, as you can see on the picture on the right in yellow, had been installed, and the reinforcing installation is ongoing in this picture. Moving on, in the pavilion building, by the 31st of January, the steel had been installed. And the picture on the right just shows a different view that was taken last week. So that's all complete now. Moving on to the gym building area. The picture on the left shows the progress at the beginning of January. As you can see, the footings had just been completed and the staging had not started. By the 12th of the month in January, the staging was essentially complete for the scaffolding for the CMU activities. And a few days later, the tarpet had been installed for winter conditions. And the picture on the right is from last week, and it shows this. It's really hard to get a picture in here. It's kind of tight, but you can see the CMU. It's already up on the second level of the staging. At the site, as I mentioned earlier, the picture on the left shows the conduit that goes to the transformer from the pole on Springdale Ave that's been installed. And the picture on the right shows the removal process of the existing sanitary and storm underground structures. Any questions on the images before I move on to schedule?
So, yeah, Al, were there any any surprises when they were digging up the old system?
I didn't hear anything, so I assume no surprises. I assume everything went smoothly. They got this done in about a day, or a couple of days rather. So I didn't hear that there were any issues with that.
So does this pretty much wrap up all the digging that needs to be done, with the exception of maybe the exception of the fire tanks, the water tanks? Pretty much all the rest of the digging done.
As far as I know, yes, this is the last existing underground structures that were remaining. Yeah, as far as I know, yes, obviously there's some asphalt that they still need to remove by the entrance, existing asphalt that they kept for the parking. But other than that, that pretty much wraps that up.
So we've pretty much uncovered everything that's going to get uncovered having to do with this project. So hidden conditions going forward were pretty much over with, or a possibility of hidden conditions that may affect our budget and schedule.
Yeah, other than, like you said, for the two big tanks, at this point, we've pretty much passed that hidden conditions portion of the project.
Dick, I think there's a little bit of new scope that's the drainage structures. So they're at the south part of the site, which is, near the parking. It's part of the civil scope, and so it hasn't started now because of other sequencing and things. So there is some digging. And I know because of some coordination, we did have to lower some of the trenching a bit. But that's all part of the normal schedule. There's nothing unusual about it, and it's in the part of the site that I don't imagine that we'll find anything. But when you're trying to look at your, exposure rate, there is still some digging. There's kind of that part of the site, but otherwise, yeah, the existing conditions, that removal stuff, I believe all of that scope is complete as of this point.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Katie. Any more questions on the images and progress? Okay. Looking at the schedule, we received an updated schedule that essentially shows that the contractor has a path to completing the project by the beginning of October. This is essentially captures the 28 calendar days that the contractor and Colliers agreed to, that they were entitled to for the various asbestos abatement delays. And so we're anticipating substantial completion by the beginning of October, and then a final completion about a month after that, the beginning of November.
So they pushed the schedule out a bit from their last update.
They did. Okay. So, and I just about an hour ago, or less than an hour ago, I received an email with some information as to why. If you remember last time, the schedule that they had provided the last time showed them completing the project only 8 calendar days after their original contractual completion date. And I know there was a comment, well, do we then give them 28 calendar days if they think they only need 8? So I went back to them, and immediately when I talked to Ed, the project manager, he said, yeah, no, there's no way we can finish, that schedule's not accurate. There's no way we can,
Okay.
we absolutely need those 28 days. That's a mistake. Let me go back to the scheduler. And so just about an hour ago, I received an email with some justification for what happened there. I still need to go through it more in depth, but that's we'll be working through that.
Okay.
Any other questions on schedule?
I have a question. This is Luciana. Do we have any indemnities for delay in delivering? What's
Yeah,
our contract states?
Yeah, I believe it's $1,000 a day. I believe it's what the
$1,000 a
liquidated
day?
damages are. Yep.
Okay. So we, the committee, should start thinking about what do we want to do, if we want to do anything. But so we have liquidated damages, part of our contract. Thank you.
Of course. And yeah, right
Yeah, but
now their schedule shows them completing the project within their revised contractual substantial completion date, accounting for those 28 calendar days. So right now it looks like they can complete the project on time, and obviously we'll be paying close attention to the schedule, especially as more trades come in and whatnot.
yeah, so they're looking to extend the contract date out 28 days, which would eliminate the ability for liquidated damages. Or it pushes that trigger out 28 days.
Yes.
Okay.
And what's our recourse on that? Meaning, do we have to accept that or not?
Well, I do believe that they are entitled to. There was a lot of asbestos abatement delays in the beginning of the project. 17 of those days were strictly for additional work that was not in the contractor's bid. And so I do believe that they are entitled to those 28 calendar days. We went back and forth on that for many months. They were actually originally asking for 41 calendar days, and after reviewing their backup, I felt that only 28 days were justified, and so that's what I was comfortable with. And they hesitantly, but they agreed to that.
Let me ask the question differently. What is the contractual mechanism by which the point of substantial completion is extended? I understand your view is that they were entitled to that. Does the committee vote on that? Is there a contractual approval that grants them that? Have you given them that approval? I'm trying to understand the mechanism by which their latitude is granted.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have not approved that change order yet, whereby that gets officialized, the 28 calendar days. We're waiting on a couple of things on that. One of the things, it's the change order, but also the general conditions that were associated with some of that delay. And so we're still going back and forth on that backup. We got the initial general conditions breakdown. We pushed back on a few things, and I have not received an updated one. So once we get that general conditions and that's when we'll finalize or officialize the delay extension.
Yeah,
I think
we'll have at some point, there will be an official PCO, potential change order, issued by M. O'Connor. And on that will be pricing as well as schedule implications. And once we receive that, then we can have that discussion. Now you can take us through it and your reasoning behind granting the 28 days. And then if we're all on board, then we would have a vote to recommend for approval to the selectmen. So that's kind of the process of this. We're not there yet with that potential change order.
That's super helpful, Dick. Thank you. I guess my feedback to the group would be, the further we progress with this as a de facto or presumed outcome, the more we pass up the opportunity to try to achieve some leverage on this. And I'm not trying to, make this combative in any way, but I just, I think it's in our interests to try to make sure that we are holding ourselves and the contractor as accountable as possible. And, you know, Luciana brought up liquidated damages. You know, is there some leverage we can try to preserve here in some form or fashion? If not, even if not now, if at some point it's useful at some point later in the progression of the project. So I think that's just my feedback is, Al, I think if we go forward with this as presumed or de facto outcome, I think we're passing up on the opportunity to exert that leverage. That's my input.
I have another question, Al. Since the asbestos was concentrated at one end of the building, I presume it was in the 1910 building, would that hold up their work on other parts of the project? Couldn't they have continued on other parts of the property?
So they actually found asbestos in all three buildings in 1910, 1970, and 1930. And I would say it was pretty, if anything, there was more asbestos in the 1970 and the 1930 because of, you know, there were more windows, there was more scope in the roofs of the 1930 building. And unfortunately, because the building needed to be fully abated and cleared by the hygienist before they could take it down, there was really not much else that they could do other than just selective demolition, but that was not part of the critical path. And so really, this was one of those things where, you know, they really needed to get this abatement cleared. And it was a little bit of a process to identify some of the additional asbestos, working with the hygienist and just doing the additional work.
I see. So it affected the entire vertical property. How about on the rest of the property, the exterior work that they had to do? Could they have concentrated on that?
Yeah, and they did some of that where they could, where it made sense. So for example, like, okay, I just showed some pictures with some of the underground structures, storm structures being removed. And the reason why they did not want to remove these earlier is because they were actually working to help with the drainage of the site. And this is why kind of they wanted to wait on those a little bit. But they did some of the grading where they could around the site during the asbestos abatement process.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So Al, is there is there a way to push? I know M. O'Connor has been slow to react on some things which you've been asking for to help clear up this whole change order. And I'm 100% in agreement with Terry and others about,
Yeah,
sooner we get this resolved, the better. And the other component is it'd be nice to know what our impact, you know, what our final impact on contingency will be. So what can we do? Is there anything that we can do to help or to get them to give you the information so that decisions can be made and this whole thing can move forward?
Yeah. So I was already planning on setting up a meeting with Crystal, who's the VP of Operations with M. O'Connor, to discuss a couple of the things. And so there is no reason why we shouldn't be able to finalize this. I mean, I feel like we gave pretty clear comments on their initial submission of the general conditions, which is essentially what we're waiting on right now.
Yeah.
So let me set that up with Crystal and see what we can do to help expedite. I mean, I would think that they want to get paid for those general conditions. So I don't know why it's just taking so long to get that back. But I will set something up with Crystal and put a little bit of pressure on, hey, you know, we really want to get this thing wrapped up and, you know, move on from it. Because I agree with you. I think we should know what that impact is. I mean, it's been months since this work took place. So
yeah, I agree that we should be elevating this.
yep.
Have you seen their calculations on how they arrive at their general conditions? Is that for the entire property or is that for just part of it? And how do they calculate those numbers?
Yeah, so we went back and forth a few times on that, and Dave Billings and I worked together on that, and even me internally. Initially, they had calculated their general conditions based on their value that's included in their schedule of values, multiplied by the number of days. And so we pushed back on that, and we said, hey, this needs to be supported as a cost of the work. What did it actually cost you for general conditions? And so they revised it and submitted again, and we had a few comments on a few items, pushed back on those, and I haven't heard since. And so I will talk to Crystal, meet with Crystal, and see if we can get this thing moved along.
Okay,
Anything else on schedule?
Mm.
All right, looking at the budget. We have not had any transfers, that's column B, since the last time I presented the budget. I will present the invoices that are highlighted in column D1 in a couple of slides. We have 8 invoices, I believe, for the month of January. Moving to the right towards column E at the bottom, 193,000. That's our current potential additional cost of the project, so our potential exposure. Assuming that, and I will, on the next slide, I will go through what makes up that 193,000. Assuming that 193,000 gets approved as presented, worst case scenario, it's not going to be 193. We're going to go back and forth on a few of these. But assuming that gets approved, we're looking at around 86% remaining overall project contingency. So it looks like we're okay there. And I will go present on the next slide what makes up that contingency. Any questions on the budget? All right, so going into more detail, starting with the construction side of things on the left side, we have no new approved change orders. However, we're going to be voting on 2 potential change orders that are highlighted in blue. Both of these have been discussed previously. The first one is PCO, potential change order number 4, for the additional sprinklers. That is for 5,707. This one I've presented over the last couple of times. I believe that their initial estimate was around 10,000 or so. And so we went back and forth a few times, had them cut back on a few sprinkler heads that we thought should have been captured in their bid. And so they adjusted the pricing accordingly. The pricing now is 5,707.36. I believe that number is fair and reasonable, and it's supported with the backup. And I recommend that it be recommended for approval. The next one is PCO number 7 for the fire protection tank valve. That is for the isolation valves for the 2 30,000-gallon tanks. That was recommended. It's something that is not required by code, but was recommended by the fire sprinkler subcontractor based on their experience with other similar tanks. And we've met with the fire chief and deputy fire chief, and they both, this is something that they both recommend that they want installed. The pricing includes the supervisory alarm, and the price is $23,966.24. I've reviewed the design team and myself have reviewed the pricing, and we believe that it is fair and reasonable, and recommend that it gets voted on for approval by the building committee.
So just very quickly, these fire protection tanks, there are 2 30,000-gallon tanks that are going to get dug into the ground. They're fiberglass tanks. The way they were designed was there's no way to isolate one tank from the other. So what this is about is saying, okay, if to put valves in that could isolate one tank or isolate the tanks individually in case there's a problem, in case there's a fire while one does have a problem. So that's essentially what this is about.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's to add isolation valves so that if you need to do maintenance or repairs on one of the tanks, you don't need to potentially drain both tanks together, and the other tank can still service the building, the fire sprinklers in the building while work is being done on one of these tanks.
And the fire chief has weighed in on this and would like to have this done. It approves, where's his stand on this, Al?
Yep, that's correct. Both the fire chief and the deputy fire chief, we met with them, and they're on board with this. I think that it's a good idea, and they would like to have this installed.
Okay, and it's important to note that this is not a code requirement, right? So
Correct.
from a design standpoint, our designers did their job and their consultants did their job, and this is a recommendation.
Correct.
So Al, this is John Jeffries from the Board of Selectmen. What I haven't heard from anybody is why.
Yeah, so this initially came up. It was recommended by the fire sprinkler
Why?
subcontractor. Yeah.
I heard that. Why?
Yeah. So it's based on their experience with other similar tanks where if there is either a problem with one of the tanks or maintenance that needs to happen with one of the tanks, you can isolate the other tank so that you don't have to drain both.
I heard that.
That would
I heard
mean
that. You said that already. Why?
well, it would help not have to potentially drain 60,000 gallons worth of water, which is something that happened on another similar project by the subcontractor.
Keep going.
They did not have the isolation valves, and they had an issue on one of them, and
What
and then they
happened?
needed. I'm sorry.
What happened?
Oh, they just needed to do repairs on one of the tanks, and sometimes there needs to be maintenance on these tanks. As I understand it, there needs to be repairs on a tank, or it could be maintenance on one of the tanks. So in
How
that
old?
particular,
Give me the details. How old were the tanks?
from what I understand, they actually weren't that old. I don't have the exact number, but I
Okay.
know that
Get the exact information. Report back with details.
Let me ask you another question, Al.
Yes.
Do you have to close the building if you drain both tanks?
Al, I'm going to interrupt you here. You would need to have a fire watch. If you want to have anyone in the building and you don't have the opportunity for fire suppression for sprinklers, you're going to pay for a fire watch. And secondary, this is kind of related, but not exactly this topic. When we need to take the water from the tank, it will have to get refilled. Obviously, we understand we have these tanks because there isn't adequate water supply within the system. So that involves a large truck coming to the site to deliver that water. So when you don't have a full system, so in this situation, we can take one offline. We still have adequate water from one. That would allow the building to be open. If we don't have this system and we have to touch something, we have to do anything, it means that the building would not be open for the public. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but sorry, I wanted to interrupt. Just add that in.
Oh, that's a good.
That's a very good answer. That is detail. That is it adds context. It adds color. It gives a whole lot more critical thinking than just the answers we were getting. Thank you.
And what's the chance that that could happen? Is it less than 1%? Or is it?
Excellent
That is a
question.
good question. And to be honest, I can't answer that one at all. So certainly that's one, we could certainly ask that question to our engineers to get a better sense of that. I will say that during design, which predates me, so I won't speak to that, there were multiple options for looking at the tanks. One of them was putting them up on the roof. That was not really palatable to most people. We didn't want to have to see the tanks. And so when you look at all the options of where you can put the tanks and the pros and cons. So if you put them on the roof, you need more steel to support that weight and the water, all those things. Then you want to cover them up.
Right.
We chose to bury them. It also, takes context for the site. There's not, 3 acres of land where you would just bury them and put a berm. You could hide it. Though none of those options were available. So the option that went forward is this, burying it 30 feet in the ground. So it's unusual for multiple reasons. It's unusual to have a tank. This is not a common thing. All of your peers don't have this in their facilities. So that's part one. Part two is the siting, the location, all the things that go into the design. It's not standard off the shelf. So because of all those things, that's how we got into the conversation with the PIVs. And I believe some conversation happened with the deputy chief beforehand. And that's part of how this came up, the context, which is this would give them a level of comfort to be able to make sure that maintain the building, keep it online, keep it open to the public. And I'll say related to this scope, Al went through it quickly, but this $23,000, it includes a couple of things. Part of it is fire suppression, so it's some work by the subcontractor. There is a small electronic component, and that's the supervisory. So we did review this with the engineers to confirm, what do we need? How do we need it? Let's split this apart and see, what's a nice to have and what do we need. So we don't need the PIV by code. However, if we do have a PIV, we do need to have an ability to oversee it, the supervisory. So some of those options are really low tech. They involve having keys and locking things. But the reality is that's very short money that you would potentially be saving in this situation. And multiple conversations with the deputy fire chief, he certainly recommended having the electronic version. At the end of the day, this would have to be approved by the AHJ. So it would just go back to the fire department to say, yes, this is the system we would like to work with. So multiple things that have kind of come together throughout this conversation to say, listen, based on the situation, everything being buried, this, at the request, and I'll say, combination of the recommendation for the subcontractor, but also coordination with the AHJ, with the fire department to say, we think that this is something that would benefit the project. And so that's really the background to this, which is, it's not an absolute must-have, but we think that based on all the reasons, and primarily this is life safety. So at the end of the day, if your contingency supports this, and we want to maintain the use of the building so that it can be available to the public for as much as possible, we want to think about the life safety of the occupants. So that's really what this scope is for, to make sure that we can keep the building open to be used, so that when it is in use, we have the fire suppression system.
And so when it's in the event that we don't do this, we don't have the fire suppression system, the building does need to have a fire watch. It needs to have a person to be in the building in the event we have it occupied. There's a cost to that. And so what really we're going to ask for is, show us the money. What is the typical, as Barry's question was, how often does this happen? What's the typical case? It's not part of their design review. It wasn't part of the scope. It's not required. So it's new to us. We haven't seen it before, and we'll want to know from the standpoint of what is the alternative. What's the likelihood that this actually happens? Does it happen once a year, twice a year? Are we much better off just putting money aside, not doing the $23,000? Is it going to happen for 2 days out of a year? Or if this does happen, is it 10 days? Are we out without the building for 20 days? So the detail and the context is going to be very important, because it'll go back to answering the questions that we've all asked. Thank you.
We can circle back with a little bit more information, more detail on that, John.
What's the time frame for this, Al? You brought it to us. Is this part of the submittal and installation process we need to get going on?
I don't believe that this is something that they need to have right now. I could go back and it's not something that the contractor has come back and said, hey, we really need to move on this. So I think we have a little bit of time, but let me go back and check with them to see how much time we got on this.
Because you got to buy these as part of a system, and if you're gonna put it in there, I tend to agree that this is a good idea. That you want to be able to isolate the tanks so you could work on them, and you're not having to close the building. But yeah, why don't you get the information, and then we can take care, vote on it next month.
Sounds good. Okay. Dick, is this something do you want to take a vote on this right now, or should I continue go through the rest of the stuff? And
well, why don't we vote on a recommendation for approval if we're all in agreement and there's no further discussion on PCO4 additional sprinklers. And we will wait on fire protection tank valve until more information is provided.
Yeah.
So with that, regarding PCO 4, additional sprinklers for NFPA 13, is there any further discussion on that PCO? Okay, if not, then is there a motion to make a recommendation to approve that PCO? Is there a
Motion.
second?
Second,
Okay, I'll poll the board. David Billings,
yes,
Luciana,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Terry,
Yes.
Ruth,
Yes.
and I am a yes also. Great, thank you. And
so Al, are you gonna put together a change on just this one PCO?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
we already have that change order.
So this will be this will be change order 3,
That is correct, yes.
okay.
Yep.
Anything else we need to get into this change order?
Not that specific change order, I just, what I have, I highlighted a couple of new ones, down at the bottom,
Okay.
so that's PCOs 8, 9, and 10. Still modifications, we're going back and forth on all these 3, so these numbers could change. Still modifications are associated with ASIs, still verification, in-field verifications of dimensions and whatnot, that's my understanding of it.
Okay, so it's coordination issues.
Yes, yep.
Okay, that's normal.
And then moving to the right on the soft costs, nothing much has changed. We have the 2 additional services for the enclosed office and for the structural engineer. Those we've shown those before. And then
Yep.
again, the contingency, the worst case scenario, we're anticipating around 86% contingency left, assuming that all of these potential changes get approved at the current cost. So that includes, for example, the fire protection isolation valves that we just discussed, et cetera. Any more questions on change orders, potential change orders, contingency? Okay, let's.
You may get to, how close are we to getting a price on the office?
Yep, so that's a good question. I actually have that in one of my slides. Is it okay if I push
Okay.
that? Yeah.
I figured so. Thank you, Al.
So we have a total of 8 invoices for the month of well, most of them are for the month of January. Some of these are a little bit older. The first one is for the general contract, the January invoice for the general contractor. That's invoice number 7. In the total of $459,972.31. And that is mostly for general conditions, the foundations, formwork, reinforcing placement, CMU, labor material scaffolding, brick repointing at the 1910 building, steel materials and erection, waterproofing, underground utilities, HVAC store materials, and site utilities. We also have our Collier's typical invoice, monthly invoice of $21,154. We have FMA's invoice, January invoice for $46,761. We have 2 Eagle leasing invoices for $398. Briggs, who's the third-party materials testing firm, for December for $9,607. And we have 2 geotechnical invoices for geotechnical observations. And those are for $990 and $3,715. I've reviewed all of these invoices, and I found them to be consistent with the contract terms and the work performed, and I recommend that these be voted on for payment.
And just quickly on M. O'Connor, FMA, the architects have signed off on that requisition, on that payout.
We have, yes.
Yep, great, okay. Is there any further discussion on these invoices? If not, then I'd like to make a motion, or is there a motion to approve these invoices as outlined just by Al?
Motion?
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I'll poll the board. David Billings?
Yes,
Luciana,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes,
Terry,
Yes.
Ruth,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. Thank you.
Great. All right. So moving on to the enclosed office. The construction documents were issued by FMA on the 25th, and the contractor is currently pricing those documents. I'm anticipating that they're gonna have that by the end of the week. We have an OAC meeting tomorrow, a weekly OAC meeting, and I'll ask them to see what the status of that is. So based on the last OAC, they were tracking to have that pricing by the end of this week. Once that pricing is completed, the design team and myself are going to review that change order. I'm giving us about a week to review that and have it revised. Once that is reviewed and essentially we feel that it's everything is in order and properly documented, we will present it to the building committee to recommend a vote on it, to recommend for payment, and then we'll present it to the board of selectmen for payment for approval.
so do we need to do this before our next meeting? Do we need a special meeting to move this one along?
I think it's likely that we're probably gonna have to push this to the next meeting, because
Okay.
unless the pricing comes back from the contractor by the end of this week, then there's a chance, assuming that we're able to maintain the schedule here, we might be able to vote on it before that. But I think
Okay,
it's likely that
as long as we're not holding up the contractor, that's fine.
So, Al, you'll keep us informed as far as if we do need to have a special meeting or not, in order
Yes.
so that we don't hold up the contractor and have extra expense and schedule delays.
Yep.
Okay, so as it stands now, we will, it'll be on the agenda for our next meeting next month, unless
Yes.
we hear otherwise from you.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. And that is it. Any citizen comments? Okay. Future business, additional business, new business.
Yeah, I could just give some
Yeah,
updates
sure.
on the communication if that's okay. I'll make it quick.
Mhm.
I met with the assistant town administrator, Chris Costello, the new person. He's been with us 2 or 3 months now. He's going to work on the website page for the community center on the town website. He's going to improve the schedule graphic. So Al, I may need to speak to you and Ed about that just to get a little bit more information rough. I
Mhm.
don't want to sort of tie us into any specific dates, but just something a little bit more so the town can watch out for what should be happening. He's going to put in a timeline of images showing some of the images that you and I have taken, Al, just to show sort of how things have progressed from the demolition and then coming back up again. He's going to move a lot of the old documents and project information into the history to clear that up. And between him and myself and Dick and Ford, we're going to try and put in some more, and with you, of course, Al, some more information, some kind of more sort of talking more about the community centre and what it will look like and what it will be used for when we do the updates in the newsletter. And that'll also then get linked back onto the website. He would also like to, and I mentioned this to Ed when I was on the site visit, he would like to do a live tour of the construction site and have it live on Facebook for the town. So promote it, make sure people know that it's happening, and then he will moderate it to take questions hopefully from town citizens about what's happening and what they see on that live feed. And then talking about the site visits, we had a great community centre club site visit last Wednesday when it was early release. We had 9 students, which is pretty much the entire group. Just a few couldn't make it because they were in different schools. They had a great time. We were able to explore in the recreation room where the building blocks were being done. We were able to look at the the dig out for the electrical cables and round by the community room as well. So that was great. The next session is the 28th of February. It's an evening session, so I'd invite all members of the committee and anybody else that wants to come along to join us. And I'll be discussing with Alan, Ed and Luciana a topic for that session.
Thank you, Ruth. Can be posted on the live video and how I can support with that.
Yeah, absolutely. It won't be done without you guys, but Chris just kind of floated it by me to see what I thought. I mentioned it to Ed. It was when you were unfortunately off sick. So yeah, if everyone's all go, I think it'll be a great way to promote it and to keep the town updated.
Right.
Right.
And
Can I ask a question? This is Luciana. Dick, can I?
Yeah, oh, yes, please.
Okay.
Go ahead. I'm
Permission.
sorry, Luciana.
Okay. So tomorrow, weather, is there going to be any work? And is this the first snowstorm that the building? What's your expectation, winter condition and all of this stuff? Do you think it's, I'm assuming not going to be any work there, right?
yeah, Luciana, I haven't seen anything officially from the contractor. I know that the PM is out sick. I don't expect that the site is gonna be open tomorrow.
And then what are you going to do for snow removal afterwards? What's in place for a situation like this? We're going to have up to 18 inches. And is someone going to clean it up so they can start working on Wednesday, or they're going to spend all day on Wednesday? What's their plan? I would like to know. By now, they should have already had a plan.
Yeah, M. O'Connor, they have their own crew that's on site every day, and the last couple of times that we got snow, that first thing in the morning, that's the first thing that they do. It's snow removal in order for and to enable essentially the other trades to do what they need to do, and so they can work.
Okay, so I haven't been on the site in a long time. There is nothing that could last, 18 inches can be a lot of weight. So just want to make sure that everything is ready to hold 18 inches, 12 to 18 inches of snow.
And you said that the tar pit for the
Yeah.
chamber.
I haven't gone on the site in a long time, so I don't know if there is anything that can just, I don't know how in the picture, what is, yeah.
Yeah, the one thing of concern will be this tarp. I know they pitched the top, but you're right. I mean, if 18 inches, that's a lot of snow.
Yeah.
What I'll do is I'll shoot Ed a text message that, hey, this came up as a potential concern for the project, and just as a heads up on that. I'm sure that they have a plan for that. But it doesn't hurt to just.
Thank you, Al.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
I will add in, we did actually have one snow day. So January 16th was also an OAC meeting day. I know the MOCC was on site that morning, primarily doing snow removal. And then by the time we got into our call, everyone was in their cars heading back home. But you're right, that day I think was only a couple of inches. It was certainly, not great, but it was not as large as they're forecasting for tomorrow. So I think they've had sort of like a pre-walkthrough. But tomorrow will be a lot more snow.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Okay, well, with that, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion.
Second.
A second, okay. I'll pull the board. David Billings,
Yes.
Luciana,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Terry,
Yes.
Ruth,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. So next meeting is March 11th, and thank you everybody for attending.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Dick.
everyone.
All right, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. Good night, everyone. Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Night, night.